Hello, team. It's time for the Daily Detangler. Hello, hello. Flying information or flying information. I just noticed that. Is it flying in formation or flying information? It's flying in formation. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that today and what I've been trying to do to detangle myself on kind of a, I don't know, what we're trying to do, that we've been consistent in talking about what we're doing, yet still for some reason can still feel somewhat unfamiliar. I'm going to borrow a couple of themes from last week's Detanglers. One of those is the concept of emergence and just dealing with the effects of VUCA. I had a detangler where I spent some time unpacking the conundrum that Catalyst put out. One of the things that I built a list around today, throughout the day, as I've been working on some things outside the team, is this idea of learning by doing. So I'm bringing that back up as well. I made a list of how I used to think about learning. Why did I do that? Well, one of the comments that I made last week that Catalyst really encouraged me to unpack this week was there's a difference between learning to do something and doing something in order to learn. A difference between learning to do something and learning something because you did it. So I wanted to kind of unpack that here today. In a view of a traditional view that I've had in the past of learning to do something, I've read, consumed information, acquired knowledge, read books, read PhD dissertations. I once built a database of like 1,000 different academic articles related to sales. I've built file structures on my computer to try to store all the information. I've really been in the past quite passive in consuming videos that we put out to each other, just kind of going through the motions and hearing them, but not necessarily engaging in them or seeking to learn something. And when I took this list, I said, that's learning to do list. And that's just my perspective. And, it's really with this idea of like storing up like a battery. It's potential energy, storing up knowledge. Maybe I'll use what I've learned, maybe not, but I'll always have it if I need it, and I'll carry it around with me. So it's this idea of let me consume what's out there. There's a lot for me to consume. On the other hand, doing to learn. What is doing to learn? And as I've shared on previous detanglers, my current view on detangling and how I come up with detanglers is I focus on doing them in order to learn. Again, I've shared this before, but on this one particularly, I had no idea where this detangler was going to go. And what I'm producing here is this idea of how do I learn by doing, right? Taking action. And in that view, these detanglers have morphed into, let me try to use something on myself. Let me use myself as a lab rat. Let me try to use something with the team. Let me try to share what's in my mind's eye. I'm trying to get better at building C slides and toasting, with pen and paper. Let me share where I'm struggling, and then kind of go through the real time detangling and detangle myself, in front of you. And that's this idea of doing to learn. I'm doing it so that I learn, and that's completely different. In fact, what I've learned by doing, because I'm doing to learn, has been completely different. It's in a different space, more focused on the idea of emerging, as I've talked about in last week's one of my detanglers, is the idea of emergence. So I've got this list on the right of the difference between doing to learn and learning to do, just from my lens as detangler. But on the right, it's more about putting myself out there, which has really been what I've been trying to do on the detanglers as well. And when I look at the right side, this idea of doing so that I learn, or doing to learn, or this concept of um, learning by doing, it's really about, being active, not passive. Active in my learning to expand my brain and to fire more synapses and to grow, and taking more ownership of that, with really no preconceived notion of where that's going to take me, which is completely different than spending a bunch of brain power to store knowledge. So this idea of being active versus passively consuming is really what stands out for me. And when I look at my own checklist of, am I actively learning? I've got some tangles. Like, for example, well, this whole active learn by doing thing, it takes time. Back to time again, right? um, it takes, if I'm going to create an environment where others can engage and actively participate, that takes preparation, providing some structure or guidance, etc. It requires a different kind of an approach to preparing, to create an environment where learning by doing or active learning can happen. And everybody's smart in their own way. And the more I've come to pay attention to and observing and hearing different perspectives, the more daunting it is to try to figure out how to bring all that together so that everybody can win. It was much more comfortable to just let everybody be smart in their own way and let them all believe their own thing and do their own thing in their silos, and blame them for whatever is going wrong. And because of that, engaging in somebody's perspective and hearing how they observe things, that really shows how their biases come up, and even their own hardwiring. And it's like, what do I do about that? And in our current environment, we don't have to do anything about that. Everybody's got their own perspective, so that's why we're set up the way we are. So we don't have to worry about that idea of perhaps coming to a unified thought, where everybody has to believe the same thing, because that's a passive thing, everybody believing the same thing, right? So if I lean into this and say, well, gee, that's maybe this is a little bit more time consuming, a little bit more work for me to do, maybe it's a little bit more energy that I have to put out, maybe it's more difficult for me to have that, that, in other words, these are the what I'm saying, and what I'm feeling is that this is a comfort zone challenge. This is what I feel like when I'm struggling to get outside my comfort zone. I look for all the reasons why I can't. But there's something unique in this, which is a bit of a paradox for me, that we're not here to all think alike, but we all are here to act in a unified way, right? So we don't all have to think alike, and we don't want that to happen, yet we need to fly in formation, which is the detangler just topic today is, if we're not all going to think alike, how do we fly in formation? We've got these birds here, and on the detangler, on Friday, I talked about emergence and building out the kind of this emergent environment. And when ants and birds and fish swim, they are able to follow simple principles, and they're able to follow certain rules that allow them to be organic in their overall shape. And they just have to pay attention. So by paying attention and being disciplined on a couple of specific rules, they're able to create a unified whole. And they don't all think alike, but they do pay attention to the same things. So it's this idea of focus and this idea of perhaps clarifying the noise, or prioritizing the inputs, or synthesizing the same things, things like that. But definitely not thinking all alike. Right? They're autonomous animals, autonomous beings. Of course, an ant has a pea brain, a little smaller than that, right? They don't have higher order logic. So we have our human brains, which allows us to have, trillions more variables, and that's more difficult for us because we're sometimes, smart. And for me, I'm smart, too smart for my own good sometimes, right? So when I look at that, what is this flying information? I keep saying flying information. No, flying in hyphen formation. What is that? And there seems to be value in that, but it's not easy to get going. So if I put on my what can I do to learn? And I ask myself, what is our formation, and how do I fly in that formation? It kind of comes down to, I basically netted it out to three things from my perspective, which is how do we observe together? So what are we doing there? And am I doing what I need to learn how to observe together? And then how do I discover together? What's the formation of discovering together? And then what's the formation of building together? And this idea of, can we observe together? Can we discover together? Can we build together? Does that need a linear process? No, there are simple rules that we can follow, that I can lean into to help me stay in formation, in the observe formation, the discover formation, and the build formation, right? So what is that? Now, obviously, this may be overly simplistic or biased to maybe just producing a detangler, or just producing a C slide, a simple output. But the concept to me is what I'm trying to focus on. It's more about this idea that we can all fly together, but we don't have to think alike. What is that? How do we fly together? Are we, what are the standard set of questions that we ask each other, for example? And if I just pull these out, these are things that I've heard us ask each other. What do you see? Why do you think that's important? Can you visualize it? Right. So this is can we get the observe formation down? Can we fly in that formation? Something like that. I don't know if that's all right, but am I asking those three things that I hear Catalyst ask a lot? And then what else does he ask? For the discover together formation, he asks those three questions there. So am I asking those three questions, and am I doing those on a daily basis? And then build together, which I was going to have create together. I don't know what that third column exactly is, but it's a concept of just sharing, and maybe it's sharing together. But sharing happens throughout this process. So when I say build together, it's kind of like, build off of one another. Let's role play. Let's make sure everybody's got their fingerprints on it, and co-create something. So the reason why I put this out is I'm not trying to come up with my own process. I'm just saying from my own lens, how am I doing am I observing together, discovering together, and building together? And the answer to that is no, I'm not. I'm pretty much still in this space of doing a lot of individual work. So like if I could get to these are the 9 questions, and on a daily basis ask myself, did I do these 9 things? What would I be able to score myself out on? Right. Did I ask others what they saw? Did I challenge somebody on why they think something's important? Did I share my hypothesis about something, and did somebody else share theirs? Is that, what's good? Is it a daily thing? Is it a weekly thing? Is it, I don't know. So this is the thing I get kind of tangled about, but I like the idea of these patterns, these configurations that are organic. So then I said, well, how would I fly what are my simple rules to fly in formation? If we were going to have the observe together formation and the discover together formation, what are the simple kind of rules? And the first thing that popped into my head were these two, the principles and the orb. And when I just look at this and I say, look, do I understand the principles? And then do I understand the orb? Does that allow me to fly in formation? And the answer to that is pretty much no. But I mean, I've played a lot with these, but the interrelationship I'm not sure about. So, maybe this is the right type of kind of rules. With ants, it's always, stay close to each other, which that would seem that the principles would be helpful with, so I like, my gut tells me that this is good. I just don't know exactly how the interrelationship happens. So then I said, well, if we're flying information, how do I get more active about my role? Because my role is a lot of observing, but what value am I bringing? Which probably isn't the best question, but it's this idea of how do I fly information? How do I fly information as detangler? So what I did was I drew, oh shoot, it's all buried under. I drew some kind of formations of the team, right? And I just had some configurations, and I was playing with this idea of our team flies in formation and what does that look like? And obviously, we're in an asynchronous environment. So that's how I came up with using the orb on this is, we have to lean on technology somehow. So what I did was I said, well, if I were an ant on our hive or our bee or a fish in our school or a bird, what would my other birds be doing? So if I'm doing if I'm I'm a bird and everybody else on the team is a bird and we're following these, what might that look like? And I said, well, let me do some role playing. And I said, our birds we have a catalyst, an activator, clarify, an architect, and a detangler bird. And what if they were all following the principles and we were all in the orb? Like what would that look like? And so, and I'm not, saying that I'm trying to redefine people's jobs or anything like that. I'm just saying from flying information, I wanted to publish what my thoughts were about the formation that we're in. What is the catalyst, the activator, the clarifier, the architect, and the detangler? And I didn't put the conceptor in here yet. One, because I ran out of time, and two, I ran out of space, and three, I wanted to get this out from who I work with in formation the most, because I don't really work with conceptor. So I don't know, this is what I put. So the why is we're all in formation. What would it look like? And then what would be the if I waved my magic wand and I detangled what everybody was doing and we were flying in an observation formation, what would that look like? So I don't know what you guys think of this, but I'd love your feedback on this, because what I did was I said, well, where have we had a situation, and there's the observation formation. So we're in an observation formation and we're flying, there's the activator who shares the, hey, what happened? And what if we all flew like this? Would that work? And did I fly in my formation the right way? Right? Am I doing that to help us move forward? Or am I being passive? Right? So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, does it require all of us to work together? Yes. Does it require all of us to have the same exact thinking? No. But at some point, for us to be in an observation formation where we're all flying together, don't we all have to agree to some level that on what we're observing. So how does that happen? Where does that happen? I mean, I'm assuming that for us to fly in formation, we do have to stay close to one another. Doesn't that mean we're kind of observing the same things, right? And then, and if that's the case, then what process information and technology? What's the orb view of that? And that's an example of how I thought about the formation. And the reason why I did that was it helped me come up with this idea that if I'm doing to learn, am I doing what I can be to be in formation, to observe, discover, and build together? And am I asking these questions? Am I engaging each other? Am I spending the time, the right kind of time to engage others? And how do I help this happen? And prioritize that. So that's and right now, today on this Monday, I'm not flying in formation. I'm backlogged on stuff, and so I'm out of formation, but I can get back in formation by asking those questions. So I'm going to try that. So that's me leading with me, and having courage to talk through who I see the other birds are, and what the other birds might be doing, and what I'm seeing them doing, but also sharing what I think I'm doing or trying to do in flying in formation, to try to connect the dots, and thinking about the experience of, what brings us close to each other is maybe the principles, but what's the world in which we're in, the environment we're in is the orchestration environment. That's our air or our water or our forest floor where ants are. That's our environment, perhaps. So how do we lean into that environment and stay in formation? And then my hypothesis is, or my thinking is the more consistent I am, the more others will be able to fly information with me. So that's today's daily detangler, my learning by doing for the day, and I look forward to your feedback. Take care.